So let's talk about Iran War 2.0. Is something going to happen again? I think so. I'm starting to see the same kind of signs that I saw before. So we're seeing things like this. The U.S. Embassy in Iran is urging Americans to evacuate the country immediately after partial airspace reopening. And then we're seeing other things like in Iran, six or seven Jews have been killed, hundreds have been rounded up. And then, like I called this before. I'm not trying to say like I'm predicting that 2.0 is about to happen, but the day that it kicked off with Israel, you could see the signs in the news if you knew what to look for. And I posted this, and then I went to class, and an hour later, sure enough, it started. And then a week later, when I posted this, you keep checking your news because you know that what Israel's about to do. It wasn't Israel. I got that wrong, but that's when the U.S. hit Iran. And like I posted that just a little bit thereafter that they really hit this thing. Now, what actually happened? Well, Trump is saying like we destroyed things, and there are other reports saying no, it's not really destroyed. I think that's actually what's happened now. We're seeing more and more indications that it's not completely entirely destroyed. And this is another reason why you're going to see 2.0, because the Israelis won't be able to let it go. Here's Trump for just a moment talking about it.
It's a great thing. That's at 3 o'clock, I believe.
Sir, are you concerned at all about secret nuclear sites in Iran? You talked about maybe just
secret nuclear site?
Yes, that there might be some.
Not really. Can I tell you? They're exhausted. And Israel's exhausted too. And I dealt with both of them. And they both wanted it settled, both of them. And we did a great job, but they're exhausted.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think the Iranians want vengeance and the Israelis don't think that the job is done. And okay, here's Iran's foreign minister just a couple of days ago talking about we made great efforts to achieve this technology and our scientists paid a heavy price. Our people endured sanctions and war was imposed on us over this. Naturally, no one in Iran will give up this technology. They're not done. They're going to keep going. And then we see this, Lindsey Graham's basically admitting like, it's okay. Let's just hear it.
Here's where we're at. The program was obliterated at those 3 sites, but they still have ambitions. I don't know where the 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium exists, but it wasn't part of the target set.
Okay, so he just said that they have ambition still. We don't know where the uranium is. And that's even if you agree with him that the places were obliterated, which it's an open question to the degree to the damage that has been actually caused. Here's former Ambassador John Bolton. He's the former national security advisor to President Trump, saying Israel is going to do whatever it needs to prevent an existential threat from arising in Iran. So it's not over. Let's hear him on Times Radio.
Well, I think it's just a very sensible thing to do. I think Trump made a mistake in creating this ceasefire shortly after the American strikes on some of the key nuclear facilities. There was no possible way to know what the total impact of the combination of Israel and the U.S.'s efforts had been. We had achieved air superiority. Time was on our side. I think we should have let it play out longer. We need to watch what Iran is doing to see if it's taking steps to reconstitute its nuclear weapons program. And if it does, we should go after them and prevent it from happening.
Right, so you think Trump ended it all prematurely in a way that may actually have endangered the world then?
Yes, I think the world is in danger as long as the Ayatollahs rule in Tehran. It is fundamental to their ideology that they want not only nuclear weapons, but continued support for international terrorism to achieve their longstanding goals of hegemony in the region and hegemony within Islam.
And so Israel can abide by that. That's another sign. And Trump ended it too soon. It reminded me of what happened in the Gulf War in 1990, 91, Bush, victory, 100-hour war. And it was like, hey, I ended it so quick. Yeah, and that was only the boots on the ground phase, right? And that seemed great, except we're back in Iran or Iraq later on because Saddam Hussein was in power. He was still saber rattling. And so there was still that. Okay. Now, so Iran still has their enriched uranium. That's what it appears to be. And they also likely still have some centrifuges that they'll be able to make work again.
Yeah, it's the enrichment capabilities that were taken out.
Are you concerned about where that uranium might be?
My understanding is most of it's still there.
I would say
This is catching U.S. congressmen after a briefing on what just happened.
it's a substantial setback, and that was a first-hand, authoritative, and reliable account. That differs greatly from the low-confidence preliminary assessment that was leaked.
I was very disappointed that we learned very little about the high inventory of high enriched uranium. Very over-optimistic portrayal of what was and was not accomplished by this mission.
I'm almost sorry I went to this briefing because almost everything that was there is in the public domain.
Yeah. So now it doesn't look like we achieved what we thought we achieved. And okay. Trump afterwards, before this briefing, was saying that I bombed Iran because nukes. And by the way, I also wanted to give them $30 billion because nukes, right? So Trump administration has discussed the possibility of helping Iran access as much as $30 billion to build a civilian energy producing nuclear program, easing sanctions, freeing up billions of dollars and restricted Iranian funds, all part of an intensifying attempt to bring Tehran back to the negotiating table, 4 sources have said. And then he's denying that, but okay. Meanwhile, in Iran, they're not forgetting, like this commentary is saying, what a photo today in Iran, their top IRGC commanders, men who spent their whole lives crushing dissent, torturing innocent, silencing voices, ruling through fear. They lived above the law, untouchable, unquestioned, and now just boxes, no legacy, no honor. But you got to think that the rest of the military apparatus sees this and thinks, I'm going to get vengeance. And so they're wanting to come back at it. Here, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has declared victory. This was 2 days ago, victory over Israel, and then said the Islamic Republic has slapped America in the face. That's the Ayatollah Khamenei's in his first public statement. Well, you know that's going to get Trump's goat, and here's what Trump said about this on Truth Social. Why would the so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the war-torn country of Iran, say so blatantly and foolishly that he won the war with Israel when he knows his statement is a lie? It is not so. As a man of great faith, he's not supposed to lie. His country was decimated. His 3 evil nuclear sites were obliterated, and I knew exactly where he was sheltered and would not let Israel or the U.S. Armed Forces, by far the greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. I saved him from a very ugly and ignominious death, and he does not have to say, thank you, President Trump. That thank you thing seems to be a theme here. I demanded that Israel bring back a very large group of planes which were heading directly to Tehran. Many Iranians would have been killed. It was going to be the biggest attack of the war by far. During the last few days, I was working on the possible removal of sanctions and the other things, which would have given a much better chance to Iran, full, fast, and complete recovery. The sanctions are biting, but no, instead I got hit with a statement of anger and hatred and disgust. Immediately dropped all work on sanction relief. They're always so angry, hostile, and unhappy, and I look at what it has gotten them: a burned out, blown up country with no future, a decimated military, a horrible economy, death all around them. I wish the leadership of Iran would realize that you often get more with honey than you do with vinegar. Peace. Okay, so that was Trump's reply. So, of course, there was a reply to the reply where the Iranian foreign minister is condemning the comments made by Donald Trump, who claimed to have saved the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. The Israelis said if they knew where he was, they would have taken him out. Trump's seeming to indicate that he prevented them from doing that. Okay, here's that foreign minister statement. If President Trump is genuine about wanting a deal, he should put aside a disrespectful, unacceptable tone toward Iran's supreme leader. It's kind of like calling him that is kind of like making fun of the Pope. I mean, it's just like within their world, like he's the guy, the Ayatollah, and stop hurting his millions of heartfelt followers, the great and powerful Iranian people who showed the world that the Israeli regime had no choice but to run to daddy. That's President Trump. That's just caught on for some bizarre reason. To avoid being flattened by our missiles, do not take kindly to threats and insults. If illusions lead to worse mistake, Iran will not hesitate to unveil its real capabilities, which will certainly end the delusion about the power of Iran. All right. I mean, it's one thing after another, after another, after another. I think something's going to pop off and not too long. We'll keep our eyes on that. In the meantime, Putin is in Russia admitting that the war is at a deadlock. Well, hinting at that at least. He's saying a little bit about that. He didn't say, like, I have to come to the table or anything, but the economy is in turmoil. Here's the ISW. The Kremlin continues to downplay the social and economic cost of Russia's war in Ukraine and inflated military spending. Putin's statements likely seek to portray a Russian government as committed to social and civilian expenditures and to downplay recent indicators of societal and economic toll of Russia's war against Ukraine and corresponding prioritization of the military industrial sector investment. Now, if you're in Russia and you are working in the military sector, you're fine. If you're working in the private sector, you probably are either going bankrupt or lacking the resources financially or in human resources because it's scarce trying to find workers or some other problems like that. And as a consumer, you're probably overpaying for things and don't have the money to make ends meet. Okay. Open source data suggests that Russia is increasingly investing in its defense industry and expanding its drone, infantry fighting vehicles, and aircraft production and shipbuilding capacity. The only one that bothers me here is the drones. The drones are the deadly one. Russia's ongoing efforts to expand drone production are having more immediate impact on the front line in Ukraine, although Russia will continue to benefit from enhanced drone production capabilities during any future conflict. Okay, so that's the ISW's assessment. Now, how are they trying to get around this? Well, to get around sanctions, here, this is in Kyiv Insider, more sanction evasions by Russia as Sberbank finds a loophole using Revolt and Germany's N26 to bypass the SWIFT ban. So they're still doing business because there are still some banks that are willing to work with them and go around things. Will they come to the table for another conference? Sure, they'll come to the table and nothing will come of it, I don't think. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has announced that he held talks with both Russian and Ukrainian delegations. Quote, there is a willingness for a third round of negotiations and Turkey is ready to host them, he said. Okay. Again, I don't see anything coming of it anytime soon. Meanwhile, Secretary Rubio, the Secretary of State, was at this signing of the Democratic Republic of Congo / Rwanda's peace agreement. The Department of State is ready, really the Department of Peace, he says. It's designed to bring people together. And I think that they thought that Ukraine was going to be as easy as this is, or the Pakistan-India thing, and it just isn't. So, I mean, good on them for brokering that deal, but it's not the same thing. Because you're dealing with Russia, it's not the same thing. Here's Gary Kasparov saying every country has its own mafia. In Russia, the mafia has its own country. Yeah. That's what's going on here. Okay, now there are a couple of kind of weird stories here as well. So those were the two big ones. The first one was really big. The second one, kind of big. Here's the next one. Chinese agents operating out of Beijing's embassy in Prague plan to stage a car collision targeting Taiwan's vice president during her visit to the Czech capital last year. That's crazy stuff that they would even think about trying to do that. But okay. And then this is even crazier. On 12 June 2025, dozens of anonymous X, formerly Twitter accounts, advocating Scottish independence abruptly went silent. Well, why would they all stop on 12 June 2025? Their sudden disappearance coincided with a major Israeli strike campaign against Iranian military and cyber infrastructure. What? So Iranian cyber was trying to urge for Scottish independence. Like, you're seeing some crazy connections around the globe of autocracies really monkeying with other nations, trying to get them involved in some chaos. Okay, this was interesting. Ukrainian society remains split on whether their country advances toward democracy or authoritarianism, with exactly half seeing democratic progress and a little less, 41%, perceiving authoritarian tendencies in new polling. And you can understand why they might see authoritarian tendencies. After all, you are in a state of martial law. So I kind of get that. And at the same time, they have really made some strides toward trying to root out corruption and toward real democracy. Okay, here's just a couple paragraphs. Trust in President Zelensky emerged as a key factor dividing public opinion. Among those who do not trust the president, an overwhelming majority view the country as moving toward authoritarianism, 82% among those who completely distrust him, and 84% among those who rather distrust him. The pattern reverses, though, amongst Zelensky supporters. Those who fully trust the head of state see democratic progress, with 76% saying that the country moves toward greater democracy. Among those who rather trust the president, opinions split more evenly. About 50% perceive movement toward democracy and 41% see authoritarianism. The Institute highlighted only, listen to this is what caught my attention. The Institute highlighted that only 4% of such respondents mentioned the absence of elections as a concern. Like, that's only a concern in Russia. And another 4% cited the persecution of the opposition. Well, dang, in a full-fledged democracy, the United States, Western Europe, we're always accusing the other side of persecuting our side. I mean, that's how democracies work, because you can talk about it. Okay, last little bit. I saw this on Truth Social because I was trolling Trump's Truth Social to see what he had to say, particularly about the Ayatollah, and he posted this today. S&P 500, NASDAQ hit record highs under Trump. Well, so you can manipulate this depending on how you're saying it. So it's up, look at that, in the past month, it's up 4% or 5%. Okay, but let's look at it fairly. In the past month, it might be up, but look at it over 6 months. Okay, and then let's just be as fair as possible. When did he take office? January 21st. January 21st, the stock market was at 6,000. The S&P 500 index, which is an index of major American stocks, was at 6,049, and today it is at 6,173. It's not up a lot. It went, wait, so here's what happened here on April 2nd, Liberation Day, all the tariff stuff, it went way down, kind of came back up when he said no tariffs, and then said we started doing some stupid things again, and then it went down, and then it went up, and just kept climbing up because he stopped doing those stupid things. So that's a better way to interpret what's going on there. Okay, I'll leave you with one last final thing. Pete Fouché. Pete Fouché was Pete the Medic. I've talked to Pete the Medic. We did some streams together with Greg Terry, and Pete was really instrumental as a medic. He got some attention for his role there because he could articulate what was going on, an English speaker in Ukraine. And Pete Fouché died 1 year ago. He's credited with saving the lives of 300 Ukrainian soldiers. That's 300 men that get to see their families again. He's also the inspiration behind our 4 armored ambulance campaign last summer. And he's also the inspiration behind a drone campaign that's forthcoming. We'll tell you about this in just a little bit. Pete actually suggested to Greg, like, look, what I need is armored ambulances so I can get these guys off the front and back where they need to go without getting blown up. And that's what we actually did, was we raised money for 4 armored ambulances and got them to the front line. You'll hear more about that, about the new campaign coming up soon. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.